What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, I want to do a complete comparison between the new iPhone XR, the iPhone XS, and the iPhone XS Max, so that if you guys are deciding between any of Apple's newest flagship smartphones, you can get an idea of what to expect with each device, some of the different features between them, and overall just ensure that you end up picking the right phone for you. So right off the bat, the first major differences between these devices obviously is their price, and also their color options and maximum storage capacities. The iPhone XR comes in 6 different colors: white, black, blue, yellow, coral, and product red, while both the XS and XS Max come in 3: silver, space gray, and gold. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that you should buy one phone over the other just because of the pretty colors, but if you are into that, you have a lot more variety with the XR. The other obvious difference between these devices is, of course, their size. The XS rocks a 5.8-inch screen, while the XS Max, like the name suggests, is the much larger 6.5-inch. The XR sits sort of in the middle of both of those devices with a 6.1-inch display. And in addition to the size difference, the actual display technology on the XR is vastly different from the XS and XS Max, which I will talk about in just a second. In the hand, all of the iPhones have a very similar feel with glass on the front and back of the XR and XS and XS Max. The difference here, though, is that the XS and XS Max have a stainless steel edge with a polished chrome-like finish, while the XR has a brushed aluminum edge that color matches the phone. Aside from the XS looking a little nicer with that polished edge, there isn't any functional difference between any of the materials. I will say, though, that if you don't like fingerprints and don't like seeing scratches on your device, opt for the XR because the stainless steel of the XS and XS Max, after you use the phones for a while, it just never quite looks as good as it did when you unboxed it after it gets all smudged and scratched. The only other physical difference between the phones is that the XR is the thickest of the bunch, although it's not something too noticeable in the hand. The XR is almost as heavy as the XS Max too, so it's definitely a pretty beefy phone even though it is a bit smaller. Aside from the screen size difference on the XS and XS Max, every other aspect and feature of these two devices is exactly the same. So just so I don't have to be repetitive, I'll be referring to just the XS in my comparison with the XR for the remainder of the video, unless otherwise noted. So I didn't forget about the XS Max, there's just no need to keep saying the same thing twice. The internal specs between the XR and XS are surprisingly close, with both phones packing Apple's brand new A12 Bionic chip and the next-gen neural engine. The difference here, though, is that with the XR, you get just 3 GB of RAM, while with the XS, you'll get 4. In real-world use, though, at least for me the last few days, I haven't noticed less RAM making a huge difference in day-to-day use with the XR. You're still getting an incredibly fast and responsive iOS experience. All your apps launch quickly, games play very smoothly, and overall, 1 GB more or less of RAM I think isn't exactly a deciding factor. The other difference here between the phones is the battery life. You've got a 2658 mAh battery on the XS, a larger 2943 mAh battery on the XR, and the largest 3174 mAh battery on the XS Max. As far as Apple's estimated battery ranges, though, you're getting pretty similar results even with the different capacities. But you have to take into consideration the screen size there, because a bigger screen generally requires more power, which is why the ranges are so close. Given the XR's cheaper display technology, though, you can probably expect a bit better battery life overall on the XR versus the other two devices. Now, as far as those screens between the XS and XR, there is a difference in quality here that should definitely be noted. With the XS, you're getting a Super Retina OLED HDR display at 458 pixels per inch. With the budget XR, you're getting a Liquid Retina LCD IPS panel at 326 pixels per inch with a resolution that's not quite 1080p. Both displays do offer Apple's True Tone technology, but the difference between the XS's OLED screen and the XR's LCD is definitely noticeable. In my opinion, you're getting better color with the XS, and I think even on camera with this sample video, you guys can definitely tell the difference. The display on the XS overall just looks sharper, clearer, has better contrast and color accuracy, and overall is the better display. However, that's not to say that the XR's display looks bad at all. It's still an excellent screen by itself that offers a perfect viewing experience from every angle, and a vast majority of people wouldn't really be able to tell the difference unless they really started to get nitpicky. But if you are used to having a crisp, clear OLED display, I don't think you'll like the XR's LCD display as much. notch. In regards to watching content, the XS allows you to view HDR movies and video while the XR does not. I don't think that's a huge deal for most people, but again, it's definitely something to note. And overall, I think the most noticeable difference a lot of people will see with the displays is when you're reading text. With the XR, you're going to see some pixelation if you really look close, while the XS is crisp and smooth. Up front, you'll also see that the bezels along the edge of the XS are a little slimmer than the XR, especially along the bottom. You're not losing screen real estate here or anything like that, but once again, I think it's something certain people will notice and it might factor into their decision. Up front, both the XR and XS rock the notch with the same true depth camera system for Face ID and selfies. Apple didn't cheap out here, and as far as I know, you've got that updated faster Face ID on the XR that shipped with the XS, and because the cameras are the same, your selfies, even in portrait mode here across both devices, should look essentially identical, at least as an image file. They'll look a little different on the devices because of the difference in the screens, but they should generally take the same picture. Around back though, that's where we have a pretty big difference. The XS packs that dual 12 megapixel setup with a telephoto lens, while the XR has just the one single 12 megapixel camera. There's the same f1.8 aperture for both devices, HDR, OIS, and True Tone Flash as well, but obviously no optical zoom on the XR because there's no telephoto lens. You'll also notice a difference in portrait mode too here because while the XS utilizes the hardware of both lenses, the XR has to rely on one lens and software to get the job done. There's also two less portrait options on the XR than the XS. Apple for some reason dropped the stage light and stage light monofilters from the XR. One more interesting difference between the XS and XR is their water and dust ratings. Apple really highlighted the improved IP68 certification on the XS during their keynote, but the XR retains an IP67 rating. Basically what that means is that while both devices are water and dust resistant, the XS can withstand being dunked in 2 meters of water for 30 minutes, while the XR can handle just 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. So there you go. Those are pretty much all of the differences between the XS, the XS Max, and the XR. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later.